Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Not agency. Every time I want to call the industry an agency. We're really big on the manufacturing agency here. Really big on it. Well, every week we take the 5 biggest stories in the manufacturing agency and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IAN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube at IAN Magazine so you can get a notification whenever we go live every Thursday. Jeff, how you doing this week?
Good. So did you do it on purpose that time? Did you throw a manufacturing agency in there intentionally?
Definitely. Definitely got to lean into it.
Well done.
Yeah. You know,
I'm great, David.
It's a callback. Yeah. That's good, Jeff.
I'm happy to be here.
That's good. Anna, happy to be here?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. We're all happy to be here.
I'm an agency player.
Agency player. We're all happy to be here, despite the fact that we're all in like dark black.
Dark black?
Yeah. It's a dark black.
It's a dark black.
It's not a light black. We're not in gray. I have a good feeling about this episode. Let's jump in to our first story this week. Deere picks new U.S. battery hub. On Monday, Deere & Company announced plans to build a new 115,000 square foot manufacturing plant in North Carolina. The new factory will expand production capacity for Chrysler electric products, namely battery technology and stationary systems. John Deere bought a majority ownership stake in the Austrian company in February 2022. John Deere plans to break ground this fall, with production targeted to begin in 2025. The new factory will create 50 jobs, and the company will invest some $69.6 million to make Chrysler battery and Chimera charger technology. The location will also become the company's North American headquarters. The One North Carolina Fund will provide the company with a $100,000 performance-based grant. The fund provides financial assistance to local governments to help attract economic investment and create jobs. Companies get no money up front and must meet job creation and capital investment targets to qualify for incentives. Local governments must also match these 1NC grants. Anna, your thoughts on John Deere and their expansion plans in North Carolina?
So obviously that's an exciting development. North Carolina has made a lot of big deals in the last week. We saw them put up about $1 billion to get an EV company set up there. Mm-hmm. How successful that is remains to be seen. But yeah, it's, the NC grants I thought were interesting, and I want to get into those in a minute. But the first thing that struck me about this story is I think it's interesting how we talk about electrification all the time of the auto industry. And it's easy to forget, I think, about how much progress off-highway has made in this area as well.
Right. Almost leading the charge.
Really, yeah. And you see that with new technology, some in forklifts first and in tractors first, for whatever reason, right? Mm-hmm. But I think a good reminder of the adjacent industries that will spring up as a result, but also of the added pressure to these supply chains, and more need for more of these resources that we can't forget are not just for cars and trucks, but also for tractors too. Mm-hmm. But yes, what really struck me, I think, about this story was the way it was handled from an incentive standpoint by the state of North Carolina. As you mentioned, the new positions being created, which are assemblers, material handlers, packagers, and quality inspectors. The company will qualify for grants, but there's, as you said, no money up front until they achieve these goals of creating these jobs, which I think is a good start. So the 1NC grants are interesting. And if you look at them in detail, they have some unique qualifiers. Mm-hmm. We always complain about these inflated incentive packages that seem to have like no accountability in some states. They're just doling out tremendous amounts of money with like question mark on what happens. Yeah. But with these One North Carolina grants, the amount of the grant is based on a percentage of the personal income tax withholdings associated with the new job. So it's actually grounded in something, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. A real equation.
A real equation, right? Yeah. And the amount of the award, which is this is according to the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, is calculated by weighing a number of factors to determine its potential value, including the location of the project, the county tier designation. They have all of their counties based like tier 1, tier 2, like based on what they need, I think.
Yeah.
The number of net new jobs, the wages of the jobs compared to the county average wage, the level of investment, and whether the industry is one of the state's targeted industry sectors. It says grant funds are dispersed annually for up to 12 years to approved companies following the satisfaction of performance criteria set out in grant agreements. To me, this is far different than a board of supervisors at a state or local level, just like hashing it out behind closed doors and then deciding on a vote, or a gut feeling, or it's based on a company presentation or something.
Based on a company presentation okayed by a third-party consultant that was paid for by the company.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think some states would do well to follow suit of this, use this as a model. I think it's really a solid program that they're using. Last thing on this, there is a rule within the discretionary grants eligibility requirements that in order to qualify, the project must result in a net increase in the company's employment in North Carolina. So they can't be used to incent job retention,
right?
Which I think is, it's a great way to be pro-business while also, protecting yourself against being held hostage by some of these companies that really use that stick to try to get more funding. In this case, you can't use that. So anyway, I know the story's about John Deere, and I think it's an exciting development with their battery plant, but I really got into the details on this, these grants, and I thought it was just an interesting model for that other states could maybe emulate this, what North Carolina is doing.
No, I agree with you. When I was working up this story, I double and triple checked that $100,000 figure because I'm like, there's no, like, that's like the first payment or the first installment. I was very impressed because, we recently ran a story about Canoe getting $113 million from Oklahoma. You mentioned some billion in EV incentives also in North Carolina. It's just, if you had to pick who you would want in your state, I feel like John Deere is a slam dunk of an investment. And you see such a lower figure. I don't know. I guess that really stood out to me. And as you kind of discussed, these grants are really protective of the state, which is refreshing to see, to be honest.
Agree.
Jeff, safer bet right now, Canoe or John Deere?
John Deere.
Yeah.
Not a
No
doubt.
hesitation.
No doubt about that one. And I think one of the reasons is I think John Deere was actually, I think they're being very careful with this investment. Which when you look at it, $70 million, that is a significant amount. I'm not trying to say it's not. But in comparison to some of the other companies that we've seen really diving into this market, it seems a little bit more conservative. We're looking at they're creating 50 jobs here, not promising 500 or anything like that. Yeah. And I think that makes a lot of sense when you look at this market. First of all, one of the things it's not that it's unproven. We have seen significant improvements in the amount of power that can be generated from these types of power systems. And that's so important when you're looking at off-road equipment, construction equipment especially. It's not about the 0 to 60 time. It's about how long you can maintain that lifting force.
That's right.
So it's a little bit different dynamic there. So I think there's still some application-specific questions that may still be out there from those who are going to purchase this type of equipment. The other thing I think that has John Deere excited, but again, conservative maybe in their perspective on it, is the cost. When you look at adding an electric system to these machines, you're going to be looking at increasing that by anywhere between 40 and 60%. So if you're already looking at a piece of machinery that's $200,000, this is a huge investment. Now, ideally, you're making that back over time in terms of maintenance and fuel and all of that type of stuff. But there's also logistic issues in terms of having the charger on site and all of that. So it will be interesting to see how this plays out long term. We always talk about off-highway and especially agriculture, all the wonderful applications that are for the electric vehicle platform. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, and it's cool to see them making this investment. I think this company, Kreisel, could be really dynamic going forward. If you look at all the markets that they have potential applications for, it goes beyond agriculture and construction. They're into light commercial vehicles, they're into semis, they're into buses. So all of these areas, again, if that's John Deere, who, like you said, has a very strong track record, very strong supply chain, understands how to get stuff to market, and now they've got this new technology with this subsidiary kind of coming into play, could be really interesting. And especially if they can figure out a lot of the supply chain issues that the automakers are anticipating having long-term with a lot of the raw materials. So yeah, I mean, this is one of those you really do kind of root for, especially also when you look at a lot of like what Anna was talking about. It's being managed very effectively. It looks like from a government stakeholder perspective.
There's oversight.
Yeah.
No, talking about their technology, that Chimero charger technology, that was one thing that kind of blew my mind a little bit. Just as I was, investigating how to pronounce Chrysler, I wound up on a demonstration of one of their executives kind of running through Chimero charger technology. And it was one of those where I was watching the video and I hadn't been that impressed about charger technology since I had seen presentations on Tesla's charging technology, just in terms of the look, feel, and how it's used. I looked into John Deere's history with Kernersville a little bit because it started back in 1988. One thing that I really enjoyed about this was, once a deal goes through and everything goes well, it's always a bunch of attaboys, just like, hey, great job. We got a great relationship with the community. They're great corporate citizens. We're really supported by the government. And it's just, I always find it interesting to think about how that language might have changed if they couldn't have come to an understanding. But it's just like, oh yeah, John Deere or Chrysler says the town provides access to a diverse pool of technical talent and from local trade and other academic institutions, as well as connected infrastructure, highways, seaports, and airports. The location is also the manufacturer of John Deere's branded hydraulic excavators. And I think there's a real opportunity when we're talking about other off-highway, when you think of John Deere and you think of off-highway, to me, I'm just thinking tractors, right?
Right.
But I do think there is huge potential in like the earth-moving side of the industry as well, and electrification there. A lot of times we normally hear that from Cat, but it's interesting to hear it from another industry player, and hopefully everything goes well in North Carolina. All right. Our next most popular story this week. Kimchi factory gets green light despite odor concerns. Illinois-based food manufacturer 5,000 Years Foods is relocating a kimchi factory in Des Plaines in Illinois. The fermented cabbage maker is taking over a building that used to be a carpet and drapery store, despite community efforts to kind of keep it out of town. According to the Daily Herald, some local officials are worried about the potential smell, even though the company promises to keep the foul smells to a minimum. The company uses a cold process to make its kimchi in sealed containers using raw vegetables, so it should smell less bad. 5,000 Years agreed to quarterly health and sanitation inspections and to adhere to noise and odor standards. Once the company made promises, pretty much everybody got on board, except one alder, who warned, quote, "I think we're tapping into a problem that's going to blossom out. I hope I'm wrong." And I understand that there's always naysayers out there, but I think everyone's hoping he's wrong, right?
Oh yeah.
No one wants a cabbage town.
You got the one guy left.
Yeah. Well, everyone wants to hold that pin in the "I told you so."
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like, hey.
Yeah, exactly. I've told you from the beginning that this was going to stink. And you guys said no. What was most funny to me about this was I feel like we ought to treat every plant application in the way that addresses odor concerns and requires regular inspections, like in advance.
And noise reduction?
Yeah, it's really hard to make an assumption on what type of operation is going to make for a nasty neighbor and what isn't. Look back on that story we did recently about that factory that was making that inexplicable humming noise.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think anyone really anticipated that?
No. And then, it kind of was driving them crazy.
Right. And so I wonder if some of these plant projects would be a little less contentious if there was some sort of standard, good neighbor covenant that these companies could sign in order to be placed in residential areas, where they agree that if these issues come up, they're going to come to the table and try to work with the community to resolve them. It just seems like it might take some of the controversy out of this stuff, like at the beginning, because this initial phase where people get nervous, it's just because they don't know. And I think that, you have this alder person here who's just objecting based on the pure fact that this is a fermented food plant.
That is cabbage.
And
I get it. Cabbage is a hard sell.
Right. It's an assumption, but their process suggests that it won't. Maybe he seems to be drumming up some controversy here when there wasn't any to start. But ultimately, I think that if you lead with your requirements, establish a signed covenant, maybe perhaps you incorporate that regular quarterly inspections for a certain established period of time in any contract that you sign, like when you're bringing these new businesses into a city or a residential community. And if the company's not complying with what's been laid out, then you have an out clause or something. I don't know. It just seems like, we see this so often where the community gets concerned because they don't know what to expect. Like maybe that should be a process that these communities have laid out in advance. Here are the safeguards that we have in place before we ever sign any deal. This is what you have to comply with, so we know that we can come into your plant every 90 days and see what's happening.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because, normally these communities want to be seen as pro-business.
Right.
And it takes something like a kimchi factory for people to start pumping the brakes a little bit and just being like, whoa, is she going to smell?
Right, and do you think
that should
maybe
be something that should be everywhere?
Yeah, well, exactly, and maybe this is just like someone's speculation that kind of spreads, based on nothing, and it creates barriers to these businesses that maybe they don't deserve. So I don't know. I think that this could be done in a better way.
Yeah, just anytime new business comes to town. All right, before we get started, is it gonna smell? Is it gonna be loud?
Yeah, here are the 10 things that you need to comply with, and if you're not meeting your end of the deal, then we're going to sit down and have a quorum over this and figure it out.
Yeah, or traffic too. Traffic. What's the other one I always hear at those community meetings? Light pollution.
Light pollution.
Mm-hmm. Now, Jeff, this thing isn't going to smell because they got a new process, right? Where they're going to make kimchi in sealed containers. My question is, they're going to have to open those sealed containers to put it in the packaging, right?
Why would you open it?
Well, so you're saying they make it right in the packaging. I'm picturing big industrial batches of this being made.
I wouldn't think so.
No, you think that it's just made right in the packaging that goes right to market?
Not immediate. I would think there's probably a minimal amount of it. When you're talking about a fermented vegetable, you wouldn't want to. Yeah. You'd want to be a minimal amount of that as much as you can. I do think this is over. I think there was a lot of overreaction here, a ton of it, to be honest. Now, you do need to do your due diligence. That's why you have local government. That's why you have people have to fill out forms and get permits in order to have a business in a building. So I agree with that. And I think this one was way overblown, especially because 5,000 years here has another facility in Chicago on the north side. And if you look at this facility and where it's located, it is surrounded by retail outlets. So if they had issues with food odors, I'm pretty sure Home Depot or Portillo's or this climbing gym or any of the other stores, home decor stores that are right there would be like, what are you guys doing here? You're killing our customers.
This climbing gym stinks.
Oh my goodness. That would just ruin the excitement of walking into a Portillo's and just but we gotta go past the kimchi factory.
So I do think it was blown out of proportion here, especially after a lot of these older people went to this facility, they checked it out. I think there was all the boxes were checked here. Yeah. I think there was a big uproar potentially, or maybe it was overblown a little bit, just because we have seen some of these bad actors before. Yeah. Okay, so people do have their radar up a little bit. But I also think we do need to get past some of this not in my backyard mentality. Yeah. Because the other thing that we've seen here in a number of other cities is a lot of this blight that can happen when you get these abandoned buildings. Oh yeah. So my personal opinion, I'd rather have a little stinky cabbage than a dilapidated building that is a potential hotspot for crime or anything else that's going to go on. So I think we have to weigh some of this stuff out as well.
Yeah, but I think it's the understanding that it doesn't have to be two extremes, right? That we can find suitable businesses for these industrial facilities without making all the concessions in the world, and come to an amicable understanding. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Fair. Yeah. But in this instance, they jumped the gun here. They made assumptions before they really did the research. And I think that's what led to this being a bigger dynamic than it really needed to be.
And I think I don't know. I think they were just doing their due diligence. Just like, okay. I mean, one thing for me is that when I was kind of traveling the community via Google Earth, it seemed like a really industrial area to me. Where
this one's going to be located, like a block over, though, a street over, houses.
Okay.
So you can definitely appreciate where they're coming from.
Okay. And I completely agree with you. Anything to fight blight, because I mean, if they're worried about the odor now, imagine the stink they're going to make when their property values plummet because there's a bunch of industrial blight. The story did make me think about quality of life, though, because where our office is located, when we drive into the office, 9 days out of 10, it is a smelly experience. It is a vile odor because of the nature of where we're located. And that has a real impact in your
vile odor?
What is the vile odor?
The wastewater plant.
Where?
You guys don't smell that? You've never smelled that. Are you joking?
Settle down.
Well, I'm worried about your senses.
It's okay.
No, I feel like you guys are sick.
When you go past the treatment facility, yes, you can. There's no way you can't
Where's
smell
the treatment
But
facility?
over here, no, very rarely do I smell
I don't live in the same area as you. I don't drive
No, it's this where the office is. So like when I'm driving in for like a 5-mile span coming into the office, it's just like, all right. We're within no shot.
No. I mean, it is that treatment facility is what, about 3-4 miles?
Doesn't matter. I smell it almost every morning. I guess you guys are coming from the other side.
We live on the other side of the tracks, man.
I guess you're coming from the other side of the tracks. Well, let me tell you about the story from the other side of the tracks.
Yeah.
Because you can't, like, if you like to drive with your windows open, you hit a certain point where you're just like, oh, that's right. Everyone's waste is processed really nearby. And it is a quality of life thing that, you know, in the event that we ever looked at having an office somewhere else, like that is a point that I would raise. Just like, hey, could we maybe not have it located next to?
It's not next to.
I know, but close enough that I have to smell it every morning.
Well, you're one person. Everybody else is fine.
Yeah. Alex smells it. He looked at me exactly because he thought the same thing I did. He thought you both had problems with your senses that needed to be checked by a medical professional. Also, just
besides, Anna and I are in the office working. David, what are you doing all day that you're outside?
Yeah, you're
partying.
Just cruising around with your windows down.
Yeah, I'm cruising.
Must be nice. Must be nice.
Standards. It is really nice.
Must be nice.
I get so much time to relax day to day. It is really nice. All right.
Do you like kimchi, by the way?
I like it. I guess.
I love it
at certain restaurants. Like I wouldn't have it every day, but I do like it. There's actually. One place that does pop-up restaurants. Alex makes this, different Alex. He makes a homemade kimchi, and it's amazing. It almost ruins all.
I think it's an awesome condiment. I couldn't eat a bowl of it, but with stuff, I think it is awesome.
Yeah, I heard it stinks. Just kidding, guys. That's
only
how
when you're
how rumors get started.
Is it the nature of that it's kimchi? Like if this was a jardinera plant, no one would have a problem.
That's the thing. Like I think that it was like somebody said it and then it spread. It was based on no fact whatsoever.
Yeah. What do you mean kimchi? I mean, come on. Don't everyone remembers the first time they drove by a cabbage field as a kid? And it's just like
everyone remembers that.
Yeah.
These experiences that are just so common.
Were you
Everybody
behind
does that.
the carnival equipment at that time?
Of course, because it was it was the height of summer. Like the cabbage crop was coming in.
Yeah.
The windows were down and it's just like, are people spreading manure? No, those are just fresh vegetables people are going to pick exactly
now
like
I'm
that
really manure and cabbage do not smell the same.
No, they don't. But like when you're a kid, you're just like the window's open and you're like something smelly. And then you find out it's cabbage and you're like, oh, mental note to never eat that ever. And then you wait 20, 30 years and try it. It's actually not that bad. Not that bad. Our next most popular story this week. American industrial icon U.S. Steel on verge of being absorbed. The U.S. Steel Corporation has been a symbol of American industrialization for more than a century. Thank you. It helped build everything from the United Nations building in New York City to the New Orleans Superdome. But now it looks like it could be acquired and the move could change the global steelmaking landscape. On Sunday, U.S. Steel rejected a $7.3 billion buyout proposal from Cleveland Cliffs, a rival. The next day, Esmark offered $7.8 billion, sweetening the pot a little bit for the 122-year-old Pittsburgh steelmaker. The company has made multiple offers that haven't been made public yet, but many have been left wondering if U.S. Steel will be sold, who the buyer is going to be, and what that means for domestic steel. U.S. Steel was founded in 1901 by J.P. Morgan, Andrew Carnegie, and others, and it dominated globally before Japan and then China became the biggest players. The company survived the Great Depression, and it was a key part of U.S. efforts in World War I and II. Now, about 54% of global steel comes from China. The company has a legacy of evolving and surviving. But Jeff, is this the end for U.S. Steel as we know it?
If it is, it looks like they're going to go out in a blaze of glory because it's really, there's actually a lot of different parts here. So I apologize if I'm jumping around a little bit. But one of the things that caught my attention, first of all, is when you look at the stock price and how that has shifted so wildly in the last week.
It's like up 30%.
It's gone from like $23 a share. Last I looked, it was over 30.
Man.
And that's interesting to me because one of the sticking points in this whole purchasing dynamics, I believe U.S. Steel came out and said, we're not going to sell until the offer is commensurate to like $49 a share or something like that.
Okay, got some room.
So they are really, they're holding out and swinging for the fences. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Obviously, through negotiations, you'd expect that to come down.
Yeah.
But the other part of this is one of the things that's driving this. It's not U.S. Steel's performance. Okay, they have had quarter over quarter where they have showed struggling financial results. But when you look at Biden's Infrastructure Recovery Act and all of the money that was allocated towards investment in infrastructure, manufacturing facilities, all of that, you need steel.
Yeah.
That makes this company very, very attractive right now. So on one hand, you've got the Biden administration sort of offering incentive to acquire this company. But on the other hand, for some of these companies to acquire it, I think they were talking in the article, it would give them like 100% stake in like the automotive auto body marketplace.
Yeah.
So there's monopoly concerns there. And there's concerns over if this merger will even be allowed with some of these companies that want to acquire it.
Yeah.
So it's almost you got both ends of the Biden administration sort of pushing and pulling at what could happen with this deal, which is really interesting. How this company has transformed over time too, and you touched on it with the things that are going on in China and how things have morphed. Even if these two companies would combine, they're still barely scratching the surface of a top 10 steel company in the world.
Yeah,
which is wild. I still think of that line from the Godfather movie where Michael is talking to his contact down in Cuba, and it's like, Michael, we could be bigger than U.S. Steel.
Yeah.
Well, everybody kind of would be, but just how things have changed. So a lot of different things going on here. It will be interesting to see how this one plays out.
Anna, the monopoly concerns do play a big role in this. And what do you think about that in terms of that $49 price point where it's like, hey, I know you're off, we're at 30 right now, but with all the free money on the table, I know you can get to 50.
Yeah, I don't know. This might be a little bit of a balancing act right now for U.S. Steel. And, people are freaking out about this, and they have some good reasons to, I think, as you mentioned, with China producing 54% of the steel that gets purchased globally. I think we have to approach the domestic supply chain carefully and ensure that we're not creating monopoly that could have a dramatic effect on, as Jeff said, the automotive industry, which I think like automakers right now are freaking out a little bit, thinking like what would happen to pricing for us if this goes through. But there is another side to this, and one that I hadn't really considered until I did a little bit of follow-up research. I found this interesting article in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Pittsburgh, obviously, where U.S. Steel was founded, Steel Town, right? And in that article, and this is according to the University of Pittsburgh's business professor, James Kraft, who said that considering the challenges of domestic steel production as the U.S. loses share in the global steel market, a takeover might be a best-case scenario from an economic standpoint. He went on to add that U.S. Steel is in trouble to the point where if a merger doesn't take place, it could close its doors and displace thousands of workers.
Yeah,
I didn't know that it was that dire, but as evidence of this fear, you see that the United Steelworkers Union has come out in exclusive support of the Cleveland Cliffs deal.
Yeah,
because they say that offers the most potential to maintain the blast furnace production and save union jobs. One concern that they highlighted, though, is that Pittsburgh sees the risk of Cleveland Cliffs, should the deal go through, moving the company's headquarters to Cleveland and stripping Pittsburgh essentially of its identity, which is really crazy to think about. But yeah, founded in 1901, this town was built on this. And outside of that identity crisis, Bill Flanagan, who's a local historian, noted that U.S. Steel spends more than $1 billion in the region each year. So, potentially to see that go to Cleveland, that would be catastrophic for Pittsburgh. But what's the alternative? U.S. Steel has been investing in its out-of-state plants, which has dredged up some fears locally of this being sort of a ticking clock on the Pittsburgh plants. Already that was a concern before this started to take place. So while the monopoly part of it is a risk, and maybe it doesn't get approved at the federal level because there's most certainly going to be an antitrust probe, but in the end, that might be what's best for U.S. Steel to let this go through and sell to Cleveland Cliffs. As for Pittsburgh, there might not be a great end game for them either way,
Yeah. Well, and I understand why people are kind of monitoring this closely. I was surprised this wasn't our top story, just because a lot of people in my family are just, they watch steel prices because we're less than 2 years removed from when supply chain issues caused steel prices to like quadruple overnight. And people were talking about 30-week lead times to get crazy overpriced materials. And so I understand how if there's disruption in the supply chain again, that is going to have a far-reaching ripple effect. And I read the same article in the Post-Gazette, and I was fascinated about how this would threaten Pittsburgh's identity. Like, what if Pittsburgh isn't Steel City anymore?
Yeah.
It's like that town's identity is so tied to being Steel City. Everything from everything along the river, restaurants, sports teams, everything is related to the history in steel. And I just can't imagine what the Cleveland Steelers would be like in the NFL. Just weird. It's weird.
It's the first thing that they do.
Yeah, first thing that they do, change all the Cleveland names to steel-related names. Which, I mean, if we're changing the Browns and Guardians, there are going to be improvements.
Fine.
One thing that I found fascinating, too, is that U.S. Steel was the first corporation to clear a $1 billion market cap. And how there's been a shift in the market with the prioritization of modern mini mills over legacy production. So it's not necessarily, it's like kind of like the end of an era, right?
Yeah, I read an interesting quote where somebody said, if you were to build Steel City today, it would not be in Pittsburgh. This is not actually the most ideal place to have it.
Yeah.
So now if we're on the cusp of maybe a change, it kind of makes sense, unfortunately, that they would move out. But
it wouldn't be Steel City, it'd be Steel Network.
Well, it's kind of surprising to hear that there's still that much reliance. I did not realize it because you do hear a lot of positive technological companies and firms going to Pittsburgh. There's been a lot of stuff with the autonomous vehicle movement that's based out of Pittsburgh and some other things too. So I didn't realize it was still so attached to the steel industry.
Well, and I mean, I think a lot of that is just straight identity, Steel Town. And it's like, even though it's every year a smaller and smaller portion of that, it's still what they have.
Is it similar to Milwaukee? I mean, it's still associated with beer.
Oh, yeah.
Even though there are fewer breweries. I mean, there's not a lot of beer brewing actually going on in Milwaukky anymore.
But $1 billion in economic activity that's derived from this company, that's not nothing.
No, that is significant.
Right.
All right, our next most popular story this week. Fatal explosion in Ohio Foundry linked to safety procedure failures. OSHA has released its findings from a federal workplace safety investigation into an explosion at the I. Schumann and Company Foundry in Bedford, Ohio, that an agency official called, quote, entirely preventable. A maintenance supervisor died and 15 other workers were injured. The explosion happened when employees inspected a water leak on a furnace used to smelt solid metals. Water leaked onto the molten metal inside the furnace, which triggered a steam explosion. Inspectors found that the company did not ensure that the required lockout-tagout procedures were followed during the employee's furnace inspection. The explosion scattered debris that damaged cars hundreds of yards away from the plant. It also caused catastrophic damage to the interior of the facility, which remains closed. The company is facing 6 serious violations and $62,500 in proposed penalties. Jeff, once again, we're standing at this table, talking about an accident that could have been prevented by lockout tagout.
So I'm going to resist the urge to sort of get back on the same soapbox and talk about $62,000 for this type of incident being ridiculously low.
Yeah.
I'm going to resist the urge to talk about safety as a culture, which was obviously an issue here, than the lack thereof, because we have talked about those things.
You're going to resist talking about those.
Yeah.
Even though it blew a wall off the plant.
Well, that was where I was going to go. When you look at the damage that was done to this facility, and we're talking about something that happened in February. Plant has been closed down since. They talked about the extensive damage within in terms of whether or not they're going to be able to get it back up and running. You've got in the neighborhood of 100 people working in this facility. This is the fallout. It cost one man his life, which is tragic enough. And then you look at the fallout that comes back. This plant may never open. I mean, I hope I am wrong. I hope I'm 100% wrong. But it all goes back to all of those things we talked about previously with all of these types of incidents. People not paying attention, not wanting to pay attention, being in a hurry. And we don't know if that's an individual. We don't know if that's a collective perspective, but it always feels like it whenever we have these situations. And it's tough to group everyone together. I know that's difficult to not do. But in this instance, you have to look at it again. And if it was something this simple, and for OSHA to actually use language that says this was completely preventable.
Yeah.
Almost, if you can read between the lines, you're like, this is friggin' ridiculous that this even happened to begin with. Now this place is most likely going to be shut down. These people are out of work. And even if somehow they get this facility up and running again, if you've got this stigma standing, hanging over your head, how do you get people to come back to work?
Yeah.
There are plenty of options right now. How do you get people back in there? And I just wish that we almost have to develop case studies, if you will, about these types of situations where a failure to pay attention to something is, I don't want to say it's simple, because lockout tagout is not a simple thing, but it's definitely not beyond the comprehension or ability to manage. So pay attention to those things, because this business is most likely done.
Well, it is an opportunity if they do sort of rally with the city. You know how the story we did a while ago, it took like 5 years to rebuild the factory, and they kind of came out with something state of the art. There is the opportunity there where you can kind of change your trajectory of the company by doing it right.
Who's going to rally around them though after this?
Well, I mean,
don't you just feel like you have a really bad? I mean, that other situation was something outside of their control.
No, it was a natural disaster. Yeah. I was just saying that, like, maybe very carefully, you could say like, hey, we've figured out where we went wrong. We're going to make sure that, because it is like a community impact. There are a bunch of jobs there. There is an economical impact with this company going away. You could I could see them coming out and saying like, hey, we understand we were wrong and it was dangerous. We've done all of these things to make sure it doesn't happen again, to try and kind of, I guess, rebuild that trust. I mean, again, it's a long shot, but I'm saying there is an opportunity there.
Maybe if there's some track record here. They've had issues in the past as well. This is an ongoing thing. I think that would be a tough call.
Okay. Anna, again, we're back at lockout tagout. And I mean, a lot of times when we see sort of normal SOPs being neglected, right? I think a lot of times you want to blame a lack of training, and we want to blame new workers. But I mean, the man who perished, his name was Steve Mullins. He was a maintenance worker. He was 46, and I mean, he had been at the company for nearly 30 years. So this was a guy who knew what he was doing. He
did, but it goes back to what Jeff didn't want to say about culture. Clearly, there's a problem here with the culture. We cover these tragedies so often. How often is it lockout tagout? So often. Yeah. And how often do you see the agency come in and do their report, And they almost never do you hear them say, like, there's nothing that could have been done differently.
Yeah. Oh,
you know?
yeah, no.
This was just a pure, I mean, it's like 99% of the time it is
Preventable. Yeah.
preventable. Somebody could have done something differently. Human error, practices, protocols, whatever, culture, just it's all stuff that you can fix. I think we're tired of talking about lockout, tagout. I think that's because it's the lack of lockout, tagout procedures being responsible for so many of these severe and often deadly accidents. Sometimes it's a company being purely negligent, but I think in many other cases, it's simply a manufacturer that's busy and updates to procedures and training get missed because they're, getting deprioritized just because, not purposefully, but they're busy and they're not thinking about it. I came across an article recently that was produced by Rockwell Automation, and it talked about lockout, tagout in terms of its ability to actually improve productivity. And I really appreciated that angle because I think sometimes we assume that the safety component is enough. It should be enough, right? Mm-hmm. But clearly these accidents continue to occur. And so if there's maybe a clear financial motivator outside of the OSHA fines and the shutdowns and the potential lawsuits, maybe that builds the case a little bit. I don't know. Rockwell explains that. So they explain how having clear lockout tagout procedures in place actually reduces costs and downtime. And the reason was very simple. Just whether or not you make your protocol clear, plenty of workers are going to attempt lockout tagout anyway. Mm-hmm. And leaving them to fumble around and waste their time, trying to figure out a process that if it were clearly posted and presented and ingrained into training would be simple and direct. It's more machine downtime. You're paying workers to jack around with this logistical, process that they don't understand or they don't usually do. I think the point here is, say for every person that bypasses it to save time, 5 of them spend much longer than necessary trying to figure it out. So I don't know. I think their objective here was admirable in trying to spread the message that like, hey, it'll take you like a couple days to do this. If you just establish like the signage, the training, if you get it in everybody's heads, and then down the line, you don't have to think about it anymore. You can just, as long as people know what to do, you're going to save them a ton of time, and you're going to save your machines downtime. And, many people don't actually find that out the hard way. Yeah. But obviously trying to prevent people from finding that out the hard way is the important thing.
If you can send that over to me, we'll make sure that the link is posted in the body copy of the podcast. And I'm really going to do it. I'm not just going to say it right now in the moment and then not do it.
You're going to say it and do it. You totally
put the onus on Anna there.
Yeah.
So she doesn't send it to you. It's kind of her fault.
If it's not there, I guarantee it's because Anna didn't send it. Yeah. It's definitely not 100%. Because she sent it to me and it sat in my inbox until somebody emailed me and asked for the link.
You guys all have my email, so if you need anything.
Just reach out to Anna and she'll send it right to you. I think we should also talk, and we kind of, when we covered the story when it happened back in February, like we did talk about how they were kind of lucky that only 15 employees were injured. This was a blast that was felt by area businesses, that there was a blast. People talked about realizing like, oh, wow, something must have happened. And then they heard debris falling onto their buildings, destroying cars, stuff like that. And I think when we think debris, we're just thinking parts of the exterior building or the concrete that was raining down. But we're talking about like molten metal raining down on the surrounding area.
Hundreds of yards.
Yeah. And that is terrifying. And if the prospect of that alone is not enough for you to be safer, I don't know what is.
What I wonder, reading this one again, you're talking about molten metal for crying out loud. And I've seen this on farms a lot where there's dangerous situations or things that could be potentially dangerous, but people just get such a comfort level in this environment. How do you, that's a challenge right there, I guess, and I guess I'm backtracking a little bit and giving them a little bit of an out here, but I think that happens a lot. And I guess how do you constantly reinforce that? Again, I'd be working with friends on the farm and stuff like that, and this machinery would be moving and they're just doing their things. I'm like, you should really slow down.
You're used to it. Yeah.
It's like alarm fatigue that we talked about, right? Like, he was doing the job for 30 years. So obviously he had grown into a routine. And it's one of those where, and I mean, we all have worked with those people. I mean, I've sometimes been that person, to be honest, where it's just like nothing bad has ever happened. So you feel sort of like invisible, or like nothing bad's going to happen.
Invincible. Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's I definitely think there's a level of that, Jeff, where that's just how you've always done your job.
Even in this type of facility. Jeez. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, situationally, we're talking about what, like a little bit of water dripping onto molten metal and then causing a steam explosion. Like maybe sometimes you don't realize how little it takes, All right. Our most popular story this week. Classic Recreations unveils carbon fiber Shelby Cobra. Classic Recreations shared a first look at number 1 of 10 licensed carbon fiber Shelby Cobra race cars. Dubbed the Diamond Edition, they are pretty and a tribute to Carroll Shelby's design and engineering. The officially licensed Shelby Cobra race car celebrates 60 years of Cobra and Shelby heritage. Only 8 remaining are available. And if you're a collector, snap one up for $1.2 million. So run on out. I'm sure that people are banging down the door. Capable of 1,000 horsepower, the Cobra race car is anticipated to weigh about 2,300 pounds, wrapped in an aerospace-grade, pre-preg carbon fiber body that weighs only 88 pounds. Jeff Stone, CEO at Classic Recreations, said, "We developed the Diamond Edition Cobra by starting with the question, what car would Carroll build with today's technology?" Jeff, is this the car he would build?
I'll let Anna get into that one. I think she's got some good points to make there. Usually when I see these types of things, I do like to, you guys can roll your eyes now in advance. I do like to think about them being as the thing that leads to the thing in terms of technological and engineering advancements.
Oh yeah.
And when you look at this on the surface, just to put this in perspective, this body only weighing 88 pounds, that is a fifth of what a normal Mustang is going to come in at. 2,300 pounds total weight, that's at least 1,500 pounds lighter. So, I mean, that is incredible. And if it's cranking out 1,000 horsepower, I mean, the thing is about ready to take flight when you crank it up. I mean, it's dangerous, quite honestly, with it being that light and that fast. So you do have to appreciate what they were able to accomplish. But when you look at a carbon fiber body on a car, it's just not practical in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. I mean, the cost alone, I mean, as you can see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But just for this to lead to something more practical and everyday, it's just nowhere even remotely close.
Like, what would that be?
I mean, there's nothing to, there's no thing to lead here. Plus,
the thing that leads nowhere.
Yeah. The other thing is, I mean, making carbon fiber is an intensely poor process for the environment. I mean, everything that it puts out there, it consumes a ton of energy, a lot of terrible stuff in terms of waste and end products. So again, I appreciate what it looks like. It's beautiful. And there's a part of me that loves cars and would love to sit in this and drive it. But it's also a little disappointing when you look at some of these engineering resources being used this way, because it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, understood. Buzzkill Jeff over here.
That's me.
Jeff, that's
killing dreams.
That's usually my take.
Yeah,
we're double teaming the downfall today.
Yeah. Just like we walked past this Shelby Cobra at a show and it's just like, what a waste. What a waste.
Yawn.
Everyone else is like whistling and taking photos, like getting as close as they can before the guards start going, whoa, whoa, whoa. Jeff Stone was talking about, like I said, I pitched to Jeff and he just deflected for your benefit, Anna. Is this the car that Carroll would build with today's technology?
I don't know Carroll.
Okay.
I didn't know him. So it's hard for me to say yes or no.
So no firm answers on this.
No firm answers on that. He did not respond for comment because he is dead.
Just it's cool, so probably.
Yes. I definitely think it's an exciting place to start from where your theme is like, what car would this legacy designer from another era build with today's technology? Like, that's fun, right? Yeah. In the case of Carroll Shelby, it's so hard to know, right? Like he had such a unique and varied history. He had like a dump truck company. He was in the military. He ran a poultry farm. He was a race car driver, obviously. Yeah. And all of that before he ever got into automotive design. So he was like in his 40s, I think, when he started designing cars. And so You can see how they got excited about this. I think they went a little overboard maybe with the name and, in my opinion, the price.
You didn't want to see it, not a touch over $1 million.
Yeah.
It's the 0.2 that really
I
did
would
it
have
for you.
paid $1 million, but like 1.2 feels greedy.
Too much.
What if it flew?
Yeah.
Well, she's going to fly.
So according to Car Scoops, they called the price astronomical, and they're, that's bad coming from Car Scoops, right? And as you said, there are still 8 of them left out of 10. But Car Scoops also pointed out the fact that if you look in the brochure for this, the vehicle's not actually street legal.
Yeah.
So 1.2 million for a vehicle that you got to drive around on a track, and not to mention, you wonder what happens to this super fast, super light carbon fiber vehicle if you crash it. It just like
it vaporizes.
It just explodes into like shards, right? I mean, you cannot fix it.
Yeah.
Yes. Very bad things happen.
So you couldn't even like nick something with this thing.
It also doesn't biodegrade.
Yeah, like
so you're kind of left with a pile of plastic.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's just not something you can even damage even a little. So I don't know. Is this what Carroll Shelby would have created? We have no way of knowing, but I know he would have liked the speed. I don't know if he would have liked the price or the material or any of that, but who knows?
I would say he would have been very impressed with the engineering, but disappointed in the fact that, because one of the things that Carroll Shelby did, yes, he was involved with the racing for Ford and really bringing the Mustang in, but part of that effort was to bring it to the street for every man to be able to drive this type of vehicle and feel this type of power. So I think there would have been some conflict there in terms of, I can do this, but not everybody can get it. I think that there is definitely some different factors there that he would not have been crazy about.
All right. Well,
based on my personal relationship with him.
Yeah, I'm glad that you both agree that despite this being so cool, what a waste. What a waste.
What do you think about it?
I think it's cool, and it should be an inspiration that, likely one person might see maybe in a museum, maybe, and then 9 people will keep in a very
way to
carefully
come out real
curated.
strong with some counterpoints there, David.
Well, I mean, one thing, I was just talking a little bit about the design. You had mentioned the weight reduction. If you want to talk about the engineering that's in this thing, I mean, you had mentioned the frame. It's at 88 pounds. You said what? Just like a quarter of another form. But it's still it still weighs 2,300 pounds. So it still weighs as much as like kind of your average Cobra. But like,
I don't think that's correct.
No, like when I was looking it up, like a Cobra was around like 2,500 pounds, and some were even a little bit less in terms of the 10 that I looked up. And so, also I looked into when you talk about sick value, the
sick
original.
Value. No one said sick value.
Was it baller, David?
No, I mean, sorry, gross value. It's just if you look at some of the original Shelby Cobras. Some of them could fetch $22 to $29 million. And I mean, there's like 6 of these very specific cars out there.
Those are kit cars, right?
Well, they're, the Daytona. And it's part of the article that I was reading was like, it could get $30 million if anyone was ever willing to sell it. One thing to talk about, though, is like how incredibly rare these cars are. That's why these replicas can do big business, And I mean, I understand, Jeff, that it's a waste of engineering resources, but if you can
I didn't say a waste.
Yeah.
I'm saying I think there's better options.
Yeah. But I mean, if you can make
I'll say a waste.
If you can make 10 cars at 1.2 million each, I don't know, is it a waste other than like making just hundreds of $20,000 sedans? I don't know.
Yes, it is a waste. Yes, I can answer that.
It is not a waste.
But if you
were
only
right
sell
on that
2
weight.
of them.
I fact checked you, but you were correct. So I was wrong.
Oh, thank you very much. I'd like you both to collectively take your sighs and eye rolls back. Just roll them back the other way.
No.
Yeah, and
Just
exhale.
suck to the side back in.
Yeah.
Not going to do it.
All right. Well, now that we're done talking about this true feat of engineering that is a touch overpriced, we'll move on to In Case You Missed It. The stories that weren't as popular on our website, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. Anna, let's start with you. What is your In Case You Missed It this week?
Whoa, starting with me, what an honor.
I know.
The story that I selected this week was titled Amazon Rolls Out Generative AI for Product Reviews. That got my attention because I use Amazon, as we all do occasionally, right?
And the product reviews.
And the product reviews are helpful. Sometimes. So here's what's happening. Amazon is rolling out a new generative AI feature that summarizes product reviews for customers. The feature, which the company began testing earlier this year, is designed to help shoppers determine at a glance what other customers have said about a product before they have to spend time reading through individual reviews. So it will pick out common themes and summarize them in a short paragraph on the product detail page. The company wrote in a blog post published this week that the AI-generated reviews are now available to a subset of mobile shoppers in the U.S. across a broad selection of products. So it's still kind of in the test phase. It may be expanded to more shoppers. They're saying additional categories may be added. This is all going to be based on customer feedback. How do you guys feel about this? Because the first thing
Crooked. Feels crooked to me.
Okay, so the first thing that I thought of here was like, how would this be used to game the system?
Yeah.
Both by Amazon, who is in control of the way this AI selects common themes, whatever common themes are. And don't forget that Amazon, they have their own private label products that they sell on their website, and they compete against other like products. But also, fake reviews have been a big problem for Amazon over the years, and they, I think, can tip the scales in a product's favor. And I wonder if it's easier to fool AI with a fake review. I don't know. But something to consider maybe when you're looking at user data that's now being funneled through an intermediary before being presented to you, I am skeptical of what that might generate, I guess. So when I saw this, I was like, I don't know if I like this. But I could definitely see it being one of those things that just gets like shoved through and we don't have a choice. But,
But this is an option, right? Like, so you can get truncated reviews as a result of the AI, or you can still go to the like original reviews, right?
I would think so, but it doesn't exactly say. Just right now, it's saying like that they're just testing it out, so we don't know. But you would hope that they would leave the individual reviews still in.
Yeah.
But a computer selecting what is the overarching theme of your review, it seems like you could easily maybe manipulate that. But
agreed. And Jeff, this comes to a theme that we talk about all the time when it comes to AI and machine learning, is that it all comes down to the code that was created by a person, by a person with bias, by a person with ulterior motives. Like,
you're so suspicious, David.
Yeah. Everyone should be suspicious about AI. More suspicious.
I feel suspicious about this.
Yeah. I think there's a general laissez-faire approach to AI just because people think it's a buzzword right now. And it's just like...
I don't think it's a laissez-faire. I think it's the fact that there is just as much positive application for artificial intelligence as there is negative. And it does come down to the person and how they want to use it. Or in this case, the company.
Yeah.
So you want to look at it from a positive perspective.
Are they going to use it positively?
They're just going to use this to essentially save time and streamline the review process and all of that kind of stuff, which is what it should be. That is the intent of AI, to do all of those things and take the manual element out of it. Now, can it be manipulated? Yeah. Obviously.
You couldn't even say that with a straight face. Just like, it's supposed to streamline things, make everything fair.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It just comes down to how you want to apply it. I mean, you say it all the time. We can't have nice things. No. Well, Amazon does have a history of showing they can't have nice things. Yeah. I'll agree with you there. But I just get a little bit nervous when we start to take somebody who has a bad history of using some of these tools and apply it generically to everybody. Yeah. I don't think that's fair. Because we talk about this a lot, like with cybersecurity applications. And AI has just as much promise as a tool as it does for the bad guys.
Yeah. So. No, agreed. It's one of those where if used to its fullest, purest potential, incredible tool, right? To move our culture forward. Or to rig the system so you only buy Amazon basics.
You should be careful though, because the robot overlords that you will soon be bowing down to are probably paying attention to this and getting feedback on how you feel about it.
I won't be bowing down to them. You guys will have your neural links already in your brains, and I'm going to be in a bunker just like using like symbols written in chalk on the walls, because that'll be the only thing they can't read.
You know what? You should try the Amazon Basics brand chalk because it's really good.
They already got Anna.
I heard it's the best kind.
Besides, now there's AI that can actually, if they can record you in some way or listen, they can actually figure out what you're saying by the way you type, or if you're writing on a cave wall with chalk. They could probably figure out what you're.
Found
I'm
ya.
going to have to mix up.
Found you in the cave.
I'm going to have to train myself to write left-handed so that way I can write both left and right-handed.
Throw them off.
Just to throw them off.
Yeah.
It's good to know. I can start training now.
David's kids are going to be learning to write with two hands.
Yeah, you must in order to win the world. No, I can actually, as a result of the catastrophic break I suffered in my right arm, I can actually write pretty decent with my left hand. Because there was that moment where when I broke my right arm and I'm like, oh wait, I'm a writer. I no longer have value to this world. I'm like,
The world?
yeah,
Wow.
I was just like, I'm like maybe trying to figure out how to
Now
make
I know why you wear
words.
black.
This comes to an interesting issue. Do you, Jeff, I'll start with you. Do you use Amazon reviews when you're purchasing something on the platform?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the stars and, people have rated, especially when it's a reseller, when it's not coming from Amazon, I probably look at them much, much more.
Yeah.
So,
How do you look? Do you just look at the top ones or like, do you see, for me, I see like the top 5-star ones and you can tell those are all plants. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to work from the bottom up.
You got to look at the 1-star ones too
Yeah.
and see what that is about.
Yeah.
So honestly, I don't use Amazon a ton. My wife orders all the stuff we need for the house from Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm on there, it's pretty specific stuff. I don't know.
This just happened to me. I just ordered a birthday gift for my son, read the reviews. The item came in the mail. I opened up the package and the first thing I said was lies. Lies. This is not a clearly printed shirt. Lies. So Anna, you're saying that you like to go to the 1 and 2 stars just to see where
Yeah.
the truth is?
I got to know, and I look at the pictures to see like what's all ripped up and stuff. I got to know what's happening with that stuff.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. My, in case you missed it this week, is a story about how GE Appliances is investing $34 million to expand U.S. refrigerator manufacturing. GE Appliances, which was sold, it's actually a hire company, this week announced a $34 million investment to expand refrigeration manufacturing and create 150 new jobs at its wholly owned subsidiary, Monogram Refrigeration, which is in Selmer, Tennessee. The investment will increase the size of the plants and add new fabrication equipment and an assembly line to build Monogram and Cafe brand integrated bottom freezer refrigerators. The expansion is going to double capacity as well as the workforce, and the new jobs will make Monogram the largest industrial employer in McNairy County. According to the company, the new space and assembly line will help GE Appliances grow its premium appliance offerings, and construction is going to begin immediately. New production will begin in the third quarter of 2025. I chose this story because I understand that we're kind of getting into a different. I was surprised that they were investing in a premium product, just with kind of some of the markers that we've seen out there in terms of like a potential like softening, slowdown. I'm not going to say the word, but it just and we've seen more investment in premium products versus kind of just run of the mill stuff. So I don't know, that kind of stood out to me. But I mean, I don't know, maybe that's in times of economic downturn, maybe that's where the money is still there to be made. I also chose this story because we often like to talk about the connection that these companies have with the community, right? Mm-hmm. And how the community dies if they leave. Or how it's, the biggest employer in town, as this will be once the workforce is ramped up. The company makes significant investments in the local community. They actively support workforce development in the community through assistance to public school programs. They also encourage employees to further their education using company-paid tuition benefits. And these are just markers for me that in the event that I was looking for a new career would really stand out to me. Mm-hmm. Someone that not only is a good corporate citizen, but also is willing to invest in me, not just as a laborer, but as kind of building my skill set so that way I could potentially further my career as well. The other part of this, there's a lot of parts of this, was that, and we ran the story on our sites, but I don't think we talked about it on the podcast. But last year, GE Appliances partnered with freight mobility technology company Einride, mm-hmm. and they successfully completed a pilot that used Einride's heavy-duty autonomous electric vehicles on public roads to move finished goods from the Monogram refrigeration plant to a nearby warehouse.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, so there's just a lot going on in this otherwise sleepy community, if you will. I don't mean that in like a negative connotation, but I don't know. I thought that there are a lot of promising things happening at this GE Appliances plant, and I'd like to see more of it. Jeff, maybe a little bit more skepticism when it comes to what's going on in McNairy County?
It was okay.
It was okay?
No, it's good stuff. And I think especially because, I mean, there was such an issue. Anybody was trying to get appliances there for a while.
Oh, man,
I mean, the backlog was horrible. So to see them increasing production there to hopefully help some of the supply chain issues is enormous. And obviously, to see a company like GE that has the just the status, I guess, as being recognized as such as an iconic company and manufacturer to do some of these things, to really show appreciation for not just their employees, but really the whole industrial sector and what the role that everybody plays. No, very encouraging. The Eidenreid stuff is amazing. That stuff is really cool. I remember us running that story. That's really promising, especially when you look at a lot of issues, and they're creeping up again. We talked about the bankruptcy for the big truck. Yellow. Thank you. Going on, not enough long haul drivers, all that type of stuff. So these types of things that can help in these autonomous vehicles that can go on certain routes to help sort of defray some of the pressures that are feeling there is very cool. No, it's an awesome story.
Well, and this is like GE Appliances brand, but it's owned by Haier. This is when GE was kind of divesting a little bit.
A little bit.
Just a little bit. Just, getting rid of a couple of assets here and there. And Jeff, I tell you what, when I was waiting for my refrigerator, I don't know if I would say that I was waiting on a high-end refrigerator. I was certainly waiting on...
Well, they're saying, high-end premium. I guess they're interchangeable. Yeah.
True. I guess I don't know. I don't know how far away I was from one of these. Anna, your thoughts on what's going on in McNairy County?
These are nice refrigerators. I just looked some of these up, and they have this really nice like white one with gold handles. And just imagining that in my home and how trashed it would be when like 15 minutes of like little kid hands all over that. But congratulations to those of you who can have this nice white matte refrigerator in your home. One day.
We're only like 16 to 24 years away from that.
The minute they walk out the door, I'm going to call them and be like, come back. No, this is cool. And like, I'm curious. So the Einride initiative, was that at the same plant?
Yeah.
Okay. So, maybe they're trying to build like a template, maybe this is their high-end automated plant.
Yeah.
And so, to see some of that investment go into to automation, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that. I just read an interesting article about Walmart. They're trying to do over the next few years, kind of like massively scale the automation within their warehouses. Yeah. But they're starting with a couple of key like test case places, and they're going to do like one DC and kind of as like a test bed.
Yeah.
And see what happens after that. But it'd be interesting to see if that's what they're doing here.
Yeah. Well, and I've noticed that at Walmart, where like there's a larger and larger section of the store that's walled off because that's where all the e-commerce happens. Jeff, what is your In Case You Missed It this week?
So I picked a story with the title, Energy Department Announces Largest Ever Investment in Carbon Removal. So the Energy Department announced it was awarding up to $1.2 billion to two projects to directly remove carbon dioxide from the air in what officials are calling the largest investment in engineered carbon removal in history. The process, known as direct air capture, does not yet exist on a meaningful scale, but could be a game changer if it is done and it's economical. So basically what they're looking at building two facilities, one in Louisiana, another in Texas. I think these locations were chosen primarily because there's so much refining activity going on there. Obviously very heavy polluters potentially. So they're looking at, this is carbon sequester. They're going to capture it in the air, bury it underground. It's a huge investment. So it's interesting there. It's also interesting because they don't know if it's exactly going to work the way they want it to.
Yeah.
Which to me was just not something you always see with a government investment at $1.2 billion. Yeah. It's not like they haven't stuck this much money into stuff that they weren't sure of, but for them to be very transparent about it, I thought was interesting. But it was also cool to see some of the impacts that it could have when you look at 30 million tons of CO2 out of the air, creating up to 5,000 jobs in the area. This is the type of green activities that I'm all for when it comes to the government.
Yeah.
Because it's proactive. It's not about, hey, we're going to do a study or a survey or whatever you want to say. It's, we're going to take a shot. You know what? We're going to do something.
Yeah.
And I can get behind this. It'll be interesting to see how it comes out. The science is there. It just hasn't been put in play from a practical application perspective. You got to jump in the pool at some point.
Yeah.
And I think the locations are good. Again, very interesting. Yeah, it's 30 million metric tons once these are fully operational. So the impact that could have on the air quality, both locally, globally, if this can be repeated in different areas, the more we do these types of things, the costs will come down because it'll become more scalable. So I think there's a lot of positive potential here. And again, I was encouraged by the transparency that came out of it. I don't know enough from a technical perspective to talk about the science behind this. But again, we're not just talking about it, we're doing something. So I can get behind that.
No, it's a story that is really easy to get behind. One thing that bugs me with some of these stories is how people hang on to a handful of big bets, if you will, that didn't pan out for the government, and then just use that as a rallying point around any kind of project that they try that is not seen as kind of a slam dunk. Anna, your thoughts on this new investment by the energy department?
Yeah, I think carbon capture is critical to what we're doing going forward. I think in their interim too, as we're trying to change some technologies to produce fewer of these emissions, it's something that's got to be a piece of the puzzle for sure. So I was happy to see it as well. I was interested to see that one of the companies that's building this carbon capture plant, and they're getting $500 million for it from the DOE, is Occidental Petroleum. Their CEO earlier this year was criticized for saying that the company was going to make a play into direct air capture, which would be a way to help preserve our industry and get more oil out of the ground.
Yeah.
It's difficult to hear that. However, I think we have to see that for the reality of it as well, because, gasoline cars, as much as there's a hullabaloo about, being forced to go electric, there's still a lot of gasoline car transit built into the future, baked into the next 10 years or what have you. I mean, that's not going away tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So if this helps give oil companies a lifeline to help retain their business as they transition into other areas, whether that's, sustainable fuels or whether it is carbon capture, whatever that may be, maybe it buys them a little time to get there. But there was some criticism of it for that reason, just being like, why is the government giving this oil company $500 million?
Understood, yeah.
But again, this all has to be done, so.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we get out of here this week, let's move on to our final thoughts. Anna, final thoughts this week?
Sure. So taking the afternoon off tomorrow, and we're taking the kids up to this family campground a couple hours north of here, and I hope to survive it. I think it's going to be just running hard for 48 hours, but I'm pretty excited. It should be fun. There's a giant fire pit, and at night they have group giant fires. Yeah. And you just bring your own sticks and
yeah, nothing like corralling your kids in darkness around a giant fire with strangers.
I know, exactly. So we'll see how that goes.
Sounds extremely relaxing.
I think it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. There's a pool. I don't know. We'll try it.
No, hopefully you get a chance to relax. And if anything, the kids are going to have a great time.
Yeah, I'm not planning to relax, but. Yeah.
All right. My final thought this week was, have either of you watched the movie Flamin' Hot?
What is that?
No, is that about the Cheetos?
Yes.
The guy who invented the Cheetos?
I've got to say, I have to recommend watching Flamin' Hot. If for only, it is one of the best sort of manufacturing focused movies I've ever watched.
Really?
And it was. It was very, it was a lot of what happens on the plant floor. It was this really great feel good story. It was actually one of the things my wife and I watched it together, and one of our immediate thoughts was, it's just nice to watch a good movie every once in a while. We're like, you're so used to watching like true crime and all these like action movies, and you're just like, you know what? Things really turned out. It was kind of nice.
It doesn't have to make you feel sad every time.
Yeah, like it's good to like watch entertainment that doesn't require like a cleanser afterwards. We're just like, yeah, but like I gotta watch an episode of The Office before I go to bed because God, I can't have that on my soul. I really liked the story behind Flamin' Hot, like to the point where my wife and I talked about it afterwards. We're just like, man, we hope this is real. We hope this is real because it's like based on a true story, and now they even like put it in quotes. And so I definitely recommend it as like a great pro-manufacturing feel-good story about an underdog. And then don't look up the reality because I have a habit of just like when I like something, I like to like follow that thread into the story, and like maybe you don't need to do that with this. Just watch it, feel good, have a good evening. But I really enjoyed it. I know like Jeff, somebody had mentioned it a few weeks ago when it came out and there was all the promotion. We were at a softball game and somebody walks up, Travis walks up, he's just like, so did everybody see that we're supposed to watch a movie about hot Cheetos? And I'm just like, yeah, I know, ridiculous, right? So I gave it some time, and then it was really cool because a lot of it takes place on the plant floor, and a lot of it's in sort of like a positive light where other like big manufacturing movies like Extract, stuff like that, were kind of like punching up or punching down, for lack of a better term, like making fun of the industry. I don't know. I just really enjoyed this, outside of it being manufacturing related. So check it out. I'd be interested to see what you guys think. Maybe it's too altruistic. Jeff, what's your final thought this week?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting time of year. Like just the amount of transition that's sort of going on right now. We wrapped up all our summer softball and volleyball and stuff like that, getting ready for fall. On a personal level, daughter's heading off to college next week.
Oh boy.
daughter's entering her last year of high school and stuff like that. So it is interesting to kind of think back and like how quickly the summer went. There's still like a handful of things I didn't really get to do that I want to. So hopefully, the one benefit I think is that you get older and your kids get older too. You can actually slow things down.
Yeah.
Like you're not going at their pace as much. And I think my wife and I are still trying to get better at that.
Working on it.
Working on the new routine.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we still got a couple of weekends left. You can, whatever you had to get in.
I'm working on it. It's
Yeah.
going to be interesting. Speaking of like transitions or whatever, like this weekend, I'm actually going to see a bunch of family that I have not seen in 15 years.
Yeah.
It's like
Oh,
a
wow,
wedding
nice.
reception. So it will be interesting.
Very cool. No, it's so that point just hit me for the first time last night when we were playing the last softball game. I'm like, why is it dark and cold? Like, it's over. It's over. All right. Well, before we get out of here this week, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use.
Actually, I forgot one thing.
No worries.
Sorry to interrupt you, but B sent in a very nice picture of her using the Today in Manufacturing can koozie, if we can throw up that image there. And again, anybody else, you want to tell us how you would or wouldn't use the can koozie, we'll get one out to you. So sorry to interrupt.
No. It was great to see it in action. Using the can koozie while watching the podcast.
The best.
Wait, does that mean like she like has to drink in order to make it through the podcast?
I mean,
Sounds
we
like
are.
I guess I didn't see what was. Yeah, right. I need a refill.
This is water.
All right. Where was I? Before we get started with the outro,
We already
please
did
make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving a positive review on whatever platform you listen to us on. If you're watching us live on YouTube, just give us that thumbs up. That really helps out a lot. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at in.com with email the podcast in the subject line. Subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. And subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us live every Thursday. All right, for Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.